for your electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning needs throughout your home. We're here today to answer a call for an older AC system that's no longer cooling. First, we'll diagnose the system, then provide the homeowner with info and upfront pricing. Here at Champion Home Services, we're experienced, licensed, and certified to do it all. Your comfort is our mission. On to the next. Don't put off your AC maintenance. Call or text today.
You and your family deserve to feel safe online, and McAfee can help protect your privacy and personal information. Try McAfee Plus, all-in-one protection for your identity, online privacy, and devices. McAfee Plus helps remove your personal data from websites that sell it and alerts you to suspicious credit and financial activity. Plus, it comes with up to $2 million of identity theft coverage. Protect yourself and your family online. Try McAfee Plus today.
If you're hit by a car, truck, or commercial vehicle, your world's turned upside down. You need help with vehicle repairs, car rental, medical care? Davis Law Firm can help get your life back on track. It's what we do. For over 25 years, we have secured important verdicts and settlements for our clients, some in the millions of dollars. I'm Jeff Davis. If you were in a car, truck wreck, or hit by a commercial vehicle, call the force right now. Call me at 444-4444. You got it. There's only one number to remember, and that's 4.
Welcome to Generation Gap.
Tonight.
What is Secretariat?
A secretary that's a woman?
Kelly Ripa hosts the comedy game show where nobody acts their age. Juniors and seniors work together to flex their pop culture knowledge for big prizes and bigger fun.
Who is this Mr.?
Mr. Rockstar?
Mr. T is going to be very upset with all of us.
New Generation Gap, tonight on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Steve, Stephania, I was at my own Meet the Teacher event tonight. That's why I wasn't in the studio with you at 6 o'clock. Everybody knows this is such a hectic time of year. So as you make sure you've got all the supplies, you're figuring out the carpool line, don't forget about how critically important mental health is for your student. Parents too, teachers as well, all school staff. Coming up at 7 o'clock, we're talking with teachers, a counselor, a psychiatrist, and a student. We have our panelists, some of them already here, ready to go. We're talking about ways to nurture your child's mental health and how to get help if you need it. Join us at 7 on all our streaming platforms. All right, everybody, welcome to this KSAT Back to School Town Hall. I'm Myra Arthur here in the newsroom. It is back to school season. You're doing all the things right now, checking off the school supply lists, figuring out the classroom assignments, but mental health is critically important when it comes to back to school, not just for students, not just for parents, teachers as well, all of us. in this time. So tonight, that's what we're here to do, is to talk about ways that if you have concerns for your child's mental health, what do you do about it? Even if you don't have concerns, what are ways to protect that mental health? We have teachers, counselors, a psychiatrist, a student, all joining us here this evening. I want to introduce our first set of panelists tonight. We have with us Miss Elena Zavala, 6th grade teacher at Jones Middle School in Northside ISD. Miss Robin Voigt, instructional coach. We joked earlier, you teach the teachers, right?
Yes.
At Royal Ridge in Northeast ISD, and Victor Hernandez, senior at CAS STEM. Thanks so much for being here. Congrats on your senior year, by the way.
Well,
that's a big year.
Yes, it is.
I want to start with you, Victor, because we're talking about mental health, especially for students. That's you. You're who we're talking about. So I'm just curious, is mental health something that you think about, that you and your friends ever discuss?
Well, for me, mental health isn't something I discuss about, only because for me, I see school as school, and I see it as important and focused, and I take care of what I need to take care of. For my friends, they find it a lot more important. In fact, in my school in CAS STEM, I see a lot more students headed to the counselor and making friends with the counselor because of how often they go. So mental health is a pretty big part with my friends and my community.
What do you do if you notice that you yourself maybe not are in a great mental place, or some of your friends are dealing with some struggles, whether inside of school or outside of school? Is it kind of common knowledge how to approach that?
Well, I wouldn't say that it would be common knowledge, because everybody deals with their mental health issues differently. Some people like to just go at it alone. They like to seclude themselves from everybody. Others need other people to support them in their mental health struggles. For me, I'd probably just go work out, take a run, like just take out that stress physically, maybe through music, play instruments. My friends, they just listen to music, they sit down, relax, or they just talk to somebody, vent out.
You know, we kind of chuckled and smiled at that, but self-care, finding those moments where you can carve something out, some time out for yourself, I know that's critically important. I'm sure that our psychiatrist, who's going to join us in a bit, would echo that. To you all, the ladies who are in the school system, why do you think now, Elena, is a good time for parents to talk about mental health, to kind of open that door of conversation with their students?
Yes, right now is an absolutely great time to open up those conversations, especially post-pandemic from COVID. We were at home, we were sheltered, alone, and so coming back to school in a school setting, we're surrounded by peers, teachers that might be unfamiliar, and so it's important to be bringing up those conversations right now, especially with everything that's going on. So.
Is there a way, Robin, for parents to lean on what the school has to offer for kind of, you know, because when you talk about getting help, it seems very overwhelming, but parents are much more familiar with the school setting. So is there kind of an avenue to start that conversation with the resources the school already has?
Definitely. The school counseling office has lots of resources for parents, for students, for the whole family. So if parents want to reach out to the counseling office, that's a great place to start at every school to see what there are and what each district offers for them to be able to connect with the different resources for them as a parent and to help their student.
You know, you mentioned the pandemic, and I do think that that has been one big positive out of it, is talking about mental health, putting that as a priority, I think has been sort of a silver lining of COVID. But it doesn't mean that it's easy to talk about, it's easy to deal with. And we actually have some advice on that. So take a listen.
Just like when it comes to kids, we want adults to reach out for help too, not be afraid to ask. Reaching out to a mental health provider or to your primary care doctor, those are great places to start.
So Elena, for you, are there signs? You're a 6th grade teacher. That's a big year, you know? 6th grade is a big transitional year. There was a lot going on for both the parents and the students. Is there something that you watch for in a student's behavior in the classroom that might signal something different is going on for them?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things that we look for as teachers. One could be a dip in attendance, so the student not coming to school regularly. Another would be withdrawal from their peers, their friends that they normally hang out with, as well as a lack in their schoolwork. So not showing as much effort or not completing assignments like they used to. and just having a personality change. And we get to know our students very, very well, and so you can tell right away if there's something off.
Yeah, you see them day in and day out, and for so many hours a day, sometimes more than parents see their kids during the week. Victor, you talked about reaching out to a counselor and people knowing that that resource is available. You think there's, for you as a senior, you know, as a teenager, is there a stigma with that, with getting help when it comes to mental health?
Well,
be honest. That's okay.
I'd say for
honest.
me there would be a stigma because I guess that for me I'm like I want to solve it by myself. You know, I want to become independent, and so I want to like face those problems. I want to make my way through. I want to break through by myself. But other people don't like to do that, so they need somebody else's help, and well that's okay. Everybody approaches their situations differently.
Yeah, and I do think that that stigma is getting less and less. You know, this idea of I can solve it on my own. I know that I want to do that so many times, but you know, just in your day-to-day around the office, you even have to rely on other people to help. So I hope that this conversation kind of helps break that down as well. I want to ask about school safety, because when I think about mental health, for me in a school, that is a really big factor. Would you agree with that, Robin?
Absolutely. It's a big factor for the parents when you're sending them off. It's a factor for the students who are hearing things and know their parents' concerns, and for the teachers when you know that you're the last line of defense on some things.
Yeah.
So it's impacting everybody.
How do teachers deal with that? I mean, when you see, you know, the headlines that unfortunately people like me share, you see events happening, how do you continue to do your job every day, knowing that, like you said, you could be the last line of defense?
Somebody has to, and our kids need us.
Yeah.
And you know, we can't just stop and let the kids sit where they are. I mean, unfortunately we did have the pandemic, and we know what happened when there was no physical threat as far as safety.
Right.
I mean, there was with the virus and all that, but when we took everybody away and we got away from each other, the lack of community really impacted our student learning, and we can't let that keep us from being a community. We have to be together. The kids have to learn from each other. Every different year, whether it's elementary or middle school or high school, has a different social setting, and that's so important to everybody's developmental needs, and the kids have to experience that. And somebody has to be willing to be there and do it. And
Yeah.
To go off of that,
Sure.
I think communication with our students is very important. You know, having that open communication of what do we do in the event of something that's going to happen. We practice those drills. We talk to our students about any fears, any questions. Do you have questions about this? Where would we go? What should you do? What is it going to look like? So I think open communication with our students as well as our parents as well. When we have drills, me personally, I tell my parents, I tell them what happened that day. This is what we did, just letting you know. We had a lockdown drill. This is how it went. You know, please remember to have those conversations with your student about why this is important, why their safety is important, and why we do these drills.
Yeah. And Victor, for you, I mean, you're growing up in this era where, you know, there are school safety threats all the time. Is it something that you're thinking about in school, or is it sort of just in the back of your mind?
Well, for me, it is more in the back of my mind, only because Southwest hasn't had any large situations like that. There was one last year in December. Fortunately, I wasn't there, but unfortunately, my sister was there. But there was no. It was just a hoax threat. There was no action implied onset threat.
Yeah.
Fortunately, but it's there in the back of my head, but I don't let it pick at me a lot.
Yeah. Do you think it weighs on your peers? I mean, is it ever something that you all talk about?
It is something that we do talk about, but as I said, we all leave it in the back of our heads. It's not because we feel like our school is secure enough. We feel like our school is secure enough, and we confide in the school safety.
How about, I mean, school safety is obviously, you know, it's paramount for every parent, every child, every district across the country, but are there other factors, I know there are, that teens deal with in terms of social media? I mean, that's a huge pressure. Peer pressure, that's always been around, but then you can't really escape it these days with social media apps constantly in our hands. So is that something that you think really has an impact on teens' mental health?
I would say yes, social media does have a large impact on teens' mental health because, well, first off, we see this perfect image of what we want, but we know we can't have because we either don't have the looks, we don't have the money, we don't have the personality, and so that's all social media is throwing at us. It's what we want, and so we always try to achieve for something that's probably out of our range. And so by always wanting more and more, we're thinking about something unachievable. And I believe that that false image of happiness isn't good for us at all, for our minds, because we want something real, want something genuine.
And Victor, let me tell you, it's not just you, it's literally everyone on social media. We all think there is this unattainable perfection. It doesn't exist, it's just on social media.
So going off of social media, something that I learned that Northside's going to be doing with our Chromebooks is that we're rolling out a program called Bark for Schools. And so what that is an AI program that monitors the students' Chromebooks for any searches of violence, predatory things, inappropriate language in their chats, because they have access to those chats that they chat with each other on the student Chromebooks. And so it has an alert that's built in that if it does pick up one of those red flags, that it sends it to the school administrator, and then also parents have an access to the parent portal for Bark for Schools so that they can monitor what their students doing and get alerts as well.
And you know, that's another factor too, that all this technology, it's integrated into the classroom. And I mean, rightly so, right? Because kids are growing up with it. They're going to go into the workforce and get a job that's going to require all of that. But I'm sure, like you're saying, it requires extra oversight for teachers to really monitor that. And Robin, we were talking about this before we got started, just teachers protecting their own mental health. And the list of things that a teacher does seems to constantly be growing, adding that technology piece as something else. So as a teacher of teachers, how do you talk to colleagues about the importance of protecting their own mental health?
That it's one of the most important things, because we can't be good for our students, we can't help instruction, we can't help our students be good in a mental place and happy at school if we're not good with ourselves.
Right.
And so we have to take care of ourselves first, even though a teacher's nature is not to. We want to do everything else and please everybody else first. But if we're completely drained and sad and upset because we're stressed out, then that's not going to help anybody. And so when we kind of see those same kind of characteristics with teachers, like she was talking about with the kids, is that you can see when someone's performance is starting to drop a little bit, or you can tell that they don't have the energy that they had. And so it's having that kind of courageous conversation to say, can I help you? Is there something you need? How can I help you? Because teachers don't want to ask for help either.
Yeah.
They want to do it all.
Sure.
They, and right now especially, they want their room to be perfect so that when their child sees the first one, especially in elementary school and kindergarten and first grade, they want that student to come in this week, either today or tomorrow, and for some on Saturday, and feel that love and that warmth and all of that. But that takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time. And sometimes our principal was just telling us at staff development today, you can't stay forever. You've got to go home and recharge your batteries too.
Yes. Are there resources that maybe go untapped that teachers could make good use of that are out there, whether it's in the school districts themselves or just things that you know of that are helpful to make sure you're checking in with yourself?
There's lots of different places, we'll put out on Facebook that there's, freebie things for teachers, or a lot of, this week there was one with the wash tub, where for a little while they gave free car washes to teachers, and each district I think posts kind of like the teacher perks, but it's a good thing to check and see. Sometimes it's just about a free ice cream, or in some places it's about campuses have rooms where teachers can go just sit in peace and quiet for a little bit during their conference period and get out of their room and out of their head.
I'm sure that is critically important for a teacher, just to have some silence.
Yes, our counselor has a Zen den for the teachers where they can
go
sit.
A Zen den. We need one of those here.
Going off what she said, that something that Northside does is that we have a wellness newsletter that goes out to all the staff, and so it has different resources specifically for mental health and teacher wellness. And something that I learned about not too long ago was that we get a discount at the YMCA, and so we recently joined, and so you get, like you were saying, that physical fitness with for your mental health. So going to be doing that soon. But there's tons of resources. We have online therapy, I think, counseling that you can also tap into. I think that's also maybe a thing that's not as utilized, but it's really good.
Yeah, I know finding time is always such a hard thing, especially for a busy teacher. So having easy access online, I imagine, would make things at least a little bit easier for those that are willing to ask for that help. Victor, you're headed back to school. When do you start?
I start the 21st.
You start the 21st. Yes. All right, big senior year ahead. So again, this is all about students. So what message do you want to share just about kind of where you think the headspace is of your peers and, you know, in 2023, living with all of these different social media pressures and school safety concerns, how would you rate the mental health of your peers?
Mental health of my peers, probably around 6 or 7.
Is this out of 10?
Yes, out of 10. I was wondering where to say a final number. No, but out of 10, 6 out of 10. We're a little bit above average. We're excited for the new school year, but then because it's our last year, so we want to start off strong, but then we're going to start getting a little lazy middle of the year. But so looking forward to the new year. I'm pretty sure everybody's excited, especially for senior year. Last year, just one more year and then we're done.
Yeah. And until you go to school somewhere else, right?
College, university.
Victor, I want to thank you so much for being here, because I know it's not easy for a teenager to come talk about mental health, and you probably have other things on your list in the last days of summer to do rather than hang out with us. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
I want to continue our conversation here with you teachers, though, especially before we let you go, talking about ways parents can lean on a teacher for help, to say, you know, I've noticed something is different at home with my child. I'm not sure what's going on. How can I as a parent work with a teacher to figure it out, to take that next step? What would you advise a parent?
I think that honesty is very important, being open and honest of what is going on with the student or at home, so that we can provide those proper resources or send them to the proper person, our counselor, our communities and schools, the principal, whoever it may be that needs to provide those resources for the parents. So I think honesty is very important, and not to be afraid or feel like embarrassed for reaching out for help to us.
Yeah.
Because we're there for the students. You know, that's the most important thing.
I would add on that not to dismiss things very quickly. It's the hustle and bustle of the new year. Everybody's into a brand new routine. You know, especially middle school, 6th grade, that transition. Oh, it's just a big transition into a new school or into a new grade in elementary. Oh, it's just a little bit more difficult this year. You'll get into it. If the kids are saying things, listen to them. You know, one of the things that we've learned the last couple of years is we've taught the kids to talk and to have a voice. And we're raising kids right now that when they say something, they're really trying to express themselves and what they mean. And I think sometimes as parents, we're just in the hustle bustle dismissing it.
Yeah.
And when a teacher may call you or someone and say, I have a concern, don't get into the defensiveness of, oh no, right? Because sometimes they may be noticing something, or just have a question to say, how can I help? Oh, you're experiencing the same thing at home. How can I help your child make the transition at school as well?
Yeah, I think that's so important to mention, not dismissing things and just say, oh, you know, it's 6th to 7th grade, it's a big year, buck up, it'll be all right. What are some signs that you notice in the classroom that, okay, maybe something's going on? What would change for you to signal that?
It looks different in every child, but it's about a change in them, right? So when you have a child who is quiet all the time, but then suddenly talking all the time and doesn't want to get away from you. They want your attention, they're trying to tell you something. They may not be using the words of, I need help, but when they suddenly make a shift, or the opposite, someone who's very active and then suddenly just wants to be alone, or you know, different playing, or you said earlier about avoiding tasks suddenly, right?
They linger. They tend to linger.
They tend to. There's when they don't have the words, they tend to change their actions.
Yeah.
And so that's when we need to be in tune that there's something different. We may not know what it is. We may not know what it is and how to solve the problem yet, but we know that we need to start looking to see.
And a conversation with a teacher sounds like a good place to start.
Absolutely.
And that's how we start every school year. Building relationships with our students is very important, so that they feel safe and comfortable with us expressing their feelings or concerns or anything that's going on with them.
Thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate your perspective. You're the ones that are in the classroom dealing with students and forming those relationships. So thank you for what you do as well.
Thank you.
And good luck on the new school year.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to bring in our next guest we have here this evening, Dr. Abigail Talley. If you're watching the news at 6, you might have seen her a little bit earlier. She is an adult and child psychiatrist with UT Health San Antonio. So we are lucky to have her here this evening for some perspective from more of the clinical side of things that we can all really learn from. So Dr. Talley, thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much for
your
having
time.
me. Oh, absolutely.
So I asked our teachers what they saw as kind of warning signs of trouble or concern. From your perspective, what does that look like in a child?
That's a great question. So it can look different in every child. Some of the things that I tell parents to look out for can be changes in sleeping pattern. That's a big one. When children have a hard time falling asleep, harder than usual, or they're waking up during the night, maybe having some nightmares and coming to you, that's something to look out for. Other things to look out for would be big changes in behavior. So if a kiddo is normally pretty quiet and all of a sudden is getting into some trouble, that could be an issue. Other issues could be isolating. If a child is suddenly isolating, usually we can miss this because it's squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Yes.
And so if a child is kind of pulling back, maybe isolating more to their room, maybe not as social with their friends, then that's a sign that we probably need to explore a little further.
And in getting help, we promote that, and really, you know, I hope in the last couple of years that stigma of getting help, admitting there may be an issue, is getting less and less. But taking that step can seem incredibly overwhelming. So we talked earlier with our teachers about ways to use a school as sort of that first step. But let's say you're to the point where, all right, I feel like my child may need to talk to someone, or I need to talk to somebody. How do you go about starting that process?
Can be a pretty daunting process. So first of all, we kind of pick out different things that we can look at to say, okay, we really need to intervene. So the things that we just discussed, if those are getting to a point where we call function is impaired, so maybe the kiddo isn't functioning as well as they usually do in school, grades are dropping, that's when it's time to seek help. To start the process, a lot of times if we're looking for a therapist, there are resources like psychologytoday.com to look for therapists in your area. Sometimes you can even call your insurance if you're looking for a professional. You can ask the school for help too. A lot of times guidance counselors are a good resource. They're a wealth of information, and they can let you know some of the resources in their area.
This seems like a great time to bring in our next guest, Dr. Melanie Morgan. She is a counselor at the Menchaca Early Childhood Center in Southside ISD. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are a counselor. You are who Dr. Talley just talked about. So tell me a little bit about the role of a counselor in a school, because some parents may not be quite clear the services and help that a counselor can provide.
Okay, and it varies by the age level and the grade level of the school as well. At my early childhood center, it's helping them understand how to go to school, how they can communicate their feelings, when they're feeling a certain way, being able to help the parents, give them resources. And then as we move into like elementary, middle school, you get the scheduling in there, you have, you're helping them with academic concerns, personal concerns, navigating social aspects, and being able to be friends. And then in high school, you're really prepping them for college, career and college readiness or military readiness, trying to set them up for success for life.
And that's what I, thought of as my high school counselor, somebody who was going to help me figure out the next step in terms of college, right?
Right.
But in this conversation about mental health, how could a counselor play that role to be a mental health resource on a campus?
Well, I know even at my level, we have children who really struggle with separation anxiety. They're excited at first, they're getting ready to come to school, it's their first time getting to be at school, and then it kicks in that, okay, I'm away from mom, I'm away from dad, so finding those resources and being able to be that safe person or safe place for them, starting them, being able to be greeted at the door by their teachers, being able to come and do play therapies and art therapies with us so that they know there's a safe person they can go talk to, talk about their feelings, but know that it's okay. And then in elementary and middle schools too, I mean, they even bring in things that are happening at home. So knowing that they can come in, and if they're struggling with something that's happening outside of the school environment, still knowing there's someone that can listen to them and then even do referrals out, kind of like to Dr. Talley.
Yeah, and Dr. Talley, how important is, you mentioned that you're in an early childhood education center. How important is age? Because having a conversation with a 16-year-old is very different than having a conversation with a 6-year-old. But mental health for that entire span is just as important. So
Absolutely.
Any advice on how to approach different age ranges?
So we always have to take into consideration the developmental age of the child. So maybe it might not be exactly equivalent to the chronological age. We always look at how the child is developing. And it's important to be able to explain feelings in a way that they can understand. So for a 6-year-old, that's going to look a lot different than a 16-year-old. And when we're looking across the span of the different fears that can occur, we see that there's certain patterns that children progress through, so we can be able to identify what fears are popping up, and then we know how to intervene.
There are a lot of adults who don't know how to explain feelings. So what is a first step to say, okay, I know something's going on, but I don't know how to start this conversation?
Excellent. So for a lot of our children, they are somaticizers. That means that they feel their feelings in their body. Maybe their stomach starts to hurt.
Yes.
Maybe they feel like their heart starts to race. Maybe they start to sweat. Maybe their hands get shaky. Those types of things can be signs. If kiddo is spending a lot of time in the school nurse's office, there might be something else going on, rather than just a bellyache. So sometimes we can start off, that can be our in to talk with the child. Hey, your stomach's been hurting a lot. You know what? My stomach sometimes hurts when I get worried too. And a lot of times, anxiety is a tough topic for a little kiddo to understand. I'll use the term worried instead.
Now, somebody at home might be watching this thinking, you think talking to a 6-year-old is tough. Try talking to a 16-year-old. So if for, the older age range, they can understand emotions, but they may not want to have that conversation with mom and dad. So how do you target that age group?
That's a tough one. That can be a very tough audience. But I think it's important, first of all, to destigmatize. So to let the teen know that these feelings, that having feelings is normal and expected, and that they're in no way letting you down, and they're in no way impacting your mood or your anxiety levels by having these feelings, and also being curious. I think that that's the best approach to take, is to be curious about where the feelings are coming from. And when we come from a place of curiosity, that it opens up for a much better conversation, I think.
We talked a lot earlier with our teachers about using school as a resource, a first step to address whatever concerns you might have with your child. So how, Dr. Morgan, can a counselor's office be utilized in that way? Let's say I know my child's campus has a counselor, but I know their teacher. I don't know the school's counselor. How do I begin that relationship?
So you can always call to the school office at any campus, any school district, and be able to ask who the counselor is that's assigned. It might be by grade, it might be by last name, depending on the age. You can also reach out to the teacher and let the teacher know, hey, I'd really like to talk with this counselor, and have the counselor contact you. Sometimes that kind of bridges the fear, because you have some who have their own school experiences that play into reaching out and connecting with us. And then we're able to meet with them, have them come in and meet with us. We can teach them the same coping strategies or skills that we're teaching to their kids, teach them so that they can do the same things with their children at home as well.
I want to touch on school safety. I think that is a huge factor in the mental health of students, teachers, parents, everybody involved with the school system. We talked a little bit earlier this week with Edgewood ISD and Southside ISD about ways that they are changing, along with so many districts across San Antonio, the entire state, about ways that they're really trying to shore up school security. Take a listen.
Aside from all our officers being trained in active shooter response training, we have a specialized unit of officers that are SWAT certified.
As well, I know that they have put in metal detectors at some schools. And, I remember a time when the conversation was, oh my gosh, don't put metal detectors in schools. What will that do to the mental health of our students, their perception of school. It's almost like maybe that pendulum has shifted. It seems like maybe more protections are enhancing mental health for some students. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it gives them that safety and security of knowing, like, okay, they have guards. You know, our school district, I'm in Southside, so we have, you know, guard shacks that are monitoring everybody that's coming in and out, even to the parking lot. Then we have our metal detectors at every campus, and we surveyed our parents on 2 different occasions, and over 80% wanted the metal detectors put into the schools. It gives them peace of mind. We're using clear and mesh backpacks, so that also gives you peace of mind knowing, like, okay, I can see what somebody is carrying on them. And even at my level, I was a little hesitant at first, worried about my 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds walking through metal detectors. But even if we have to use the wand, they think it's fun, and like you're, you know, detecting their superpowers. So it's not creating any kind of fear in them. It's you make it fun and you adjust it to the age of your kids. And I think that the parents have peace of mind knowing that all of these things are in place for their children's safety.
Here is that interview with Southside ISD about those metal detectors.
The security guards are going to stop people that are coming. The gate, that's going to make it harder for anybody to come. I think they would have to jump the gate. You know, hopefully by that time the security guards are going to catch them.
So with this heightened awareness of the threats that school safety faces, really, I mean, at any campus, any level, has the role for you as a counselor changed a little bit, just with that heightened sense of anxiety?
Yes, most definitely. Even what we're able to provide to teachers, we're providing trauma-informed practices and teaching them like how to work with children that have trauma in their background or have that fear, that anxiety, that pit in their stomach, the upset stomach, you know, the ones that are worried to come to school, being able to address that. It's more relevant, or it's more prevalent now, where in the past it was, you know, we were working more on academics and you had a little bit of social, and now it's a lot more social emotional.
And Dr. Talley, I've been wanting to ask you this since we have set up this town hall. I think it's a challenge for parents not to project their own anxieties onto their kids, but have that conversation so the awareness is there. You know, when they're coming home and saying, today we had this lockdown drill or we had this active shooter drill, you want to be able to talk about that with your child, but, you know, be able to make them aware, I guess, of your own feelings without making them feel more anxious. What are ways that parents can do both of those things?
It's a fine line, right? Because a lot of times our anxieties we can project them when we're having a conversation with either our kiddo or our teen. I think that what's important is to let them know that you know, their fears and their feelings are valid. But then also talk with them a little bit about the measures that are being taken to ensure safety. And then you can also share that, yes, this would make me a little bit nervous to walk through a metal detector as well, but I would feel a little bit safer maybe walking through it.
Yeah. And what about sharing your feelings as a parent with your child? You know, age, of course, I'm sure plays a role in that, but is there some sort of benefit in saying, hey, you might be feeling this way on campus. I'm feeling that way too when I drop you off, or, you know, when I'm at work and worry about you, those kinds of things.
I think that during conversations, it's very important to let your kiddo know that you do have feelings, but a lot of times we want to make sure that the spotlight is still on them for listening to what feelings they have, so that they know that they kind of have the floor, that it's okay to have these feelings, but that you really want to hear, because sometimes kiddos can take cues from what you're feeling, and then they might say, you know, kind of similar things.
Right.
So you would want them to kind of come up with their own words, and they might stumble around a little bit. It's hard to describe feelings, even for adults.
Yes, exactly, even for adults. So as we wrap up this conversation here, I just want to ask you both if you have sort of any final thoughts on what a message you want to get out there, whether it's parents, students, school staff who are watching this, ways that we can all keep in mind the importance of our mental health going forward.
I would just say have the conversations. The conversations can be uncomfortable. The conversations can be awkward, and that's okay, because the things that we can talk about, we can manage. The things that we keep hidden and we don't want to talk about, those are the things that sometimes can lead to bigger issues.
Dr. Morgan, for you, any final thoughts?
Well, also knowing that like a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a dysregulated child. So knowing self-care is important, whether it's teachers, parents, anyone. Knowing that you need to keep your cup full, take care of yourself if you want to be able to be a better support for your own child, for your class if you're a teacher, or even an administrator. It's just important to have that self-care and have some time for mindfulness.
And when we say dysregulated, what does that actually look like?
Not being in control of themselves, whatever that might be for that child. You know, if they're acting out, if it's tantrums, if it's an upset stomach and then they're lashing out, you're seeing behaviors that you haven't seen before. And then the parent might be so flustered, so frustrated because they've seen it time and time again, and they're just like done with it. And they're not going to be able to serve that child. They're not going to be able to calm that child because they're frustrated with them. So they need to get in control of themselves in order to better serve the child.
Yeah, we have to care for ourselves to care for others,
Yes.
and that applies to our teachers and our school staff and all of those that we entrust our kids to during this time of year. Dr. Talley, Dr. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. This has been incredibly helpful. I hope it's been helpful to everybody who's watching this. Thanks to our other guests as well. You can check this out, watch it on demand on KSAT.com, and make sure that you're keeping in mind your own mental health. And good luck in this next school year.